Anna, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Anna Dutra is with Future Forward. Plaza Bridge Groups is Future Forward, which I'm Teresa Spangler, the CEO of Plaza Bridge Group. And, our sessions here are all about trying to find these bright spots in the world of really horrific news on so many accounts. And Anna, you have so much experience. You have board experience, I think, which is incredibly, you're on multiple boards. You have some inspiration maybe to share with women and other ethnic groups, DEI, the DEI, trying to reach, diversity and inclusion. So maybe there's some tips there you can share. And, I think initially just would love to hear a little bit about your story. You have a technology background, I believe, also. Yeah. So I think I'd love to hear a little bit about how you have come up, what inspirations did you have on your journey that led you to actually being on boards and, wanting to also impact women, because I know you're very active in that regard as well.
So first of all, Teresa, it is a pleasure to be here with you. And the work that you're doing is just so important to share and spread the word to women and to men as well about careers possibilities and how people have choices, right? So I'm born and raised in Brazil. I came to the US later in life. But since I was a child, I knew I wanted to do something global. And when I was in my early 20s, IBM started to recruit again in Brazil. And I thought, I don't know much about technology at that point. I had finished my undergrad in economics and I was studying law, but I said, it is a global company. Maybe it's going to take me places. So I went to interview with IBM, and that to me was my first lesson was, don't be afraid to say, I don't know this yet, but if you hire me.
I love the yet.
And that was a part of my interview. I was really young. And this guy who became my boss looked at my resume and said, oh, you have an undergrad in economics, you have a law degree, you're getting your master's in economics, nothing here spells technology. And I said, yeah, you're right. I barely know how to spell technology, but if you hire me, I am going to be up to speed in 6 months. And he hired me in sales, which was really interesting. He said, you certainly know how to sell an idea. So he hired me in sales, which was a phenomenal way to start your career. I have 3 daughters, and I tell them that every young person, I don't care what job you're going to have in the future, should have a sales job at some point, because you're going to be selling something, even if it is your ideas, regardless of what you choose to do. So fast forward, I became an account manager, and I was doing strategic planning at IBM. And a colleague got into my office and said, I just came to say goodbye. I am moving to the US. And I said, oh, we're going to do. And he said, I'm going to get my MBA at UCLA. And Teresa, this was back in 1990. I had no idea what an MBA was. But I said, what is an MBA? And by the time he was done explaining, I wanted one too. So I remember I left the office that day, went to the US consulate. At that time, you got those very thick Princeton review books for the GMAT and for the TOEFL and all that. I got home. My husband, we've been married for over 30 years, said, what is this? I said, oh, we're going to the US. He's a surgeon. Never mind. He said, to do what? I said, well, you can start to apply to places. I'll apply to MBAs. And lo and behold, 2 years later, we were landing in Chicago. He got a contract to do research for 2 years while I did my MBA. And then it was a difficult decision, because by the time I finished my MBA, I had job offers, but we had to decide, and that's where the dual career thing comes in.
Sure.
My husband would have to go through the residency program again in the US. He had his residence in Brazil and in France, supposed residence, but it didn't matter. He would have, so that was a big family decision.
Yeah.
And during 5 years, as he was going through the residence program again, and I had started a new job, a new career application for the green card, we had 3 children. We had 3 girls in the middle of that. So I always say, if somebody told me, I see your life and this is what you're going to go through, I would say, no way. And now I look back and I think, how did we pull this off, right? Those were tough 5 years. But then I spent the rest of my career advising, running companies in professional services and technology. My last 2 roles, full-time roles, I was the CEO of Korn Ferry Consulting. So I built the entire non-search side of the business for Korn Ferry. Then I was the CEO of the Executives Club in Chicago. And then at some point I thought, I think I want to do a couple of things now. Yeah. I want to stop this full-time career, been there, done that, and have my portfolio career. So I started to get into corporate boards. I was already in a number of non-for-profits, but then private companies, public companies. I started to teach and mentor and do some coaching as well. And that was back, I made that decision back in 2018, so 4 years ago. And I love my portfolio career. Of course, our girls are now young adults and are spread all over the country. And that's my story. You asked a question about the boards, right?
Well, so yeah, I'm interested. I love that you're calling it your portfolio career. So maybe explain what that means to you. And then, yeah, I'd love to have, at Korn Ferry, you certainly had lots of contacts. So for people that are seeking maybe board seats that don't have those contacts, what might you tell them would be strategies they could use to help them? But first, talk about your portfolio.
Well, I think that you have a portfolio career when you don't have a full-time job, because when you have a full-time job, you know that that's your first and foremost obligation, right? Yeah. And you're leading a company, leading a team. Results depend purely on you. When you embrace a portfolio career, you're taking, and it's very complicated from a coordination, a logistics perspective. I happen to be a very organized person, thank goodness. Yeah. But otherwise you cannot do that, because you have a percentage of your time dedicated to boards and you have to coordinate all that. A percentage of your time is, I do a lot of teaching and speaking, or even things like what we're doing now. And then a percentage of my time, I coach and mentor. And you need to think, okay, what is taking more of my time now? Okay, I need to take something down so that you don't go crazy and don't have a life. And I have my personal interests as well. But in regards to your question about boards, I actually, the contacts that I had at Korn Ferry were never a bridge to a board. The one thing that I tell anybody, and in particular any woman who is interested in a board role, is think about your board career like any other career. Mm-hmm. You don't go from never serving on a board to saying, oh, I want to serve on a public company board. You know what my first board was? Was my oldest daughter's soccer team. I started to serve, and then I served on the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association, as the president, and that's where I learned the basics, right? What asking for a motion is, when do you need votes, how do you approve minutes, and things like that. Then I started to get into larger, more complex non-for-profit boards, foundation boards. Then a client, and that's another thing. People say, oh, non-for-profit boards, are they of any use to me? Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I agree.
how you gain experience, how others see your work.
Yeah.
My very first corporate board, which was a private company, came about by somebody who was seeing my work in a non-for-profit board, liked my dedication, demeanor, understanding of governance issues. As soon as a seat opened, that person asked me to do that. And the other point is the fact that you were a great operator, a great executive, doesn't mean that you necessarily will be a great director or even like directorship. So, so think about why you want to do that, because you're not going to be making the decisions. You have a lot of responsibility, a lot of work, and then educate yourself. I'm a big stickler for continuous education, and I chair a couple of non-gov committees, so I help with the selection and interviewing of future directors. And one thing, Teresa, that I always ask is, what courses, certifications, studying have you done over the last couple of years that apply directly to you being a director? And if the person looks at me and says, nothing, I don't have time for that, or I don't need that, or whatever, I'm like, bring the next one. So it's not something that you wing. I have this commitment to myself. Every year I get a new certification, or I pass an exam and all that. And last year I did the Master Governance and ACD exam, and I had to study a 500-page workbook. And I had a 4-hour proctored exam, which I had not done since I said to my husband, I said, this is so stressful. I'm not sure if I'm going to pass, but you know, I take my responsibility as a director very seriously, and I would only work with people who do too.
Well, it also sounds like it feeds you. Like, you know, you want to be a continuous learner, whether I'm
a learner.
Right. I get that, because I love that. I'm too, because I'll have certifications and they have no application anywhere other than maybe creative. So, but I love to go do things. So I think that's wonderful. But do you ever, did you ever in your career face imposter syndrome? I write about that all the time.
I still do.
I know, right? It doesn't go away.
And did you know, if you study that, you know that it's way more prevalent in women than in men, right? And we tend to only apply for something once we really check all the boxes, right? And then I remember when I got my first job offer in the US. So the person says, well, I'm calling you. You did really well in the interviews. I'm calling to make an offer. I said, seriously? And then I just learned the person laughing on the other side. So that was my first exhibit number one of imposter syndrome. There's one thing that I mentioned. I have 3 daughters, right? When they call me and they're like, Mom, I'm freaking out. I have this interview tomorrow. I'm seeing this client for the first time. Or I'm going to be teaching or speaking, anything that's making them, that's triggering that. There's one thing that I heard once, and I've used that all the time, which is, remember, you are seeing other people's outside with your inside. And you may be having all the butterflies in the world, but I'm sure you're going to look good. People who are looking at you are seeing your outside with their inside, and you don't know how crumbling they are in their stomach, how panicked they are. So imagine that everybody is on the same boat, right? And calm yourself down, because you can do it. You can really do it. So, you know, excellent advice. And I have a daughter too that's in her 30s, low, you know, young 30s, and
and talk to mentor a lot of 20s and 30s and more women, but I do, I'm into, because I am an adjunct data professor at App State here. But I sometimes I'm approached, and the darkness seems to come through to these younger professionals who are having a hard time finding, why do I need to do anything? The world's falling apart. And, news makes it sound like that. From the history of news has always made it sound like that. We've had dark times in the past. What do you tell your own daughters about thinking about the future and how to keep some optimism? Are there things that you could share, that maybe strategies that keep you optimistic?
Yeah, well, I am a very optimistic person, right? And with that, I try to celebrate the victories. I'm not 100% Pollyanna. I see what's around us. I think we had a couple of big blows recently.
Yes, you're right in the middle of one of them.
Exactly, right? We talked about the shooting in Highland Park.
Yeah.
When I got a call from one of my children who grew up going to that parade, and she was bawling. She was sobbing. She said, "I can't believe this." But I think we can draw strength from those situations and actually ignite our desire to fight, and not to let those tragedies determine what our life's going to be like.
Right.
We just went through COVID, right? 2 years that changed the entire world. And I actually wrote a piece that Ariana Huffington published in her Thrive magazine, that I called "The Unexpected Gifts of the Pandemic." And in the middle of that chaos, number one, I reconnected with my family. I've always been close to my sisters and to my mom, and they're all in Brazil. But because we were so worried about our mother, who was isolated in an apartment, we started to do bi-weekly Zoom calls with her. We taught her how to use Zoom. To make a long story short, she now actually learned how to play the piano on Zoom with a teacher on Zoom.
That's so awesome.
We were worried about her being so isolated. And then with my children, who are all young adults, they are all in their 20s. Each one of them came to Florida and spent between, the shortest one was 4 weeks, the longest one was 7 weeks. And that was such a gift, because when are you going to have your children work? They were all working from home, studying from home. They all came here. And then the third thing, which is ironic, I always said I was not a dog person. My husband always had his dog. And I said, "It's your dog, not mine." Well, I rescued 3 dogs during the pandemic, and the unconditional love that they give you. So there's always a way to make the lemonade out of the lemon, right? And listen, for people who are in the workplace right now, nobody knows what's going to be like. I always talk about the fact that there are events that are interrupters. And there are events that are total disruptors. The pandemic was a disruptor. Things are not going back to the way they were before. And I remember that as we were going through it, I had tremendous empathy for, in particular, working mothers of school-aged children. Because it was hard. Suddenly you are at home, your children don't have childcare. They are learning in a totally different way, but demanding your attention. And by the way, your work did not stop. But people learn how to adapt and how to find new and different ways to cope and reinvent themselves. I was looking at a news anchor that actually quit her job. You may have seen it. I think it was on CNN. And she said, "Listen, I am one of the people who is an output of the Great Resignation. I decided that life's short and go spend time with my family. So it's going to be different for every person, but it's going to be different.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. You sort of bring this up. And I want to dig in a little bit, because making a difference. And I know you want to make a difference in women's lives and diversity. And, I'm seeking to do that. What strategies or tips might you give individuals who feel like it's just overwhelming, right? You're in the middle of Chicago. You guys went through some horrific things. We've got a war going on. We've got, just politics, which has been dividing of people. So how would you share any strategies that might help young people, anybody that says, I want to make a change, I don't even know where to start? There's little steps.
So let me start with my beliefs, right? I believe in paying it forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we are all blessed in different ways, and it is our obligation to pay it forward and help others. I believe in karma too. I think that people who do things for others are happier, are more fulfilled. And then the last thing is that if each and every person does his or her part, even if it's something tiny, you just helped one person,
right?
Gosh, we're going to have a better world. I don't think there's an excuse for I don't know where to start from.
Yeah.
Think about what your passion is. Is it children? Is it a particular disease? Is it education? Is it helping women and minorities? Is it immigration? And go find a place to volunteer. Go find somebody to help. I mentor a number of young people. And the only thing is that once people know that you do that, they start to send people to you right and left. I'm like, oh my God, I need to start saying this. But I mentor a number of people. My causes were always women, minority, children, education. I remember that once somebody asked me if I want to be on the board of the opera. I said, not my thing, right? And I'm not judging. There are people who can do wonders for arts, others for science. My thing is very clear, was always education, minorities, women in particular. And so I serve on the board of the Latino Corporate Directors Association. We designed a curriculum called Board Ready Institute for Latinos. Latinos are the lowest represented segment in corporate boards.
Right.
We barely make it to 3%. I'm all for empowering, mentoring, sponsoring women. In fact, my next call is with a woman who I'm starting to mentor right now. And what people don't realize is that every time we give something back like that, it is a two-way street. I feel so happy when I get a call from somebody saying, oh my God, remember that advice you gave me, or when you spoke about that, or you've been my life. Somebody said just recently, you've been my lifelong mentor. I'm like, oh yeah, I know this person for 20 years. And it feels so good. But then what I always say to people too is that not so fast. One day you're going to get a call from me, and I'm going to ask you to help, mentor, support somebody else. And so people know that one day they'll get that call from me.
It'll be their turn.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sitting on boards can be stressful. You kind of alluded to that. Are there any special things that you do to kind of keep your stress and anxiety and your whole mental health, healthy?
I do lots of things, actually. And that to me, when people ask me, what advice would you have given to your younger self? I'd say spend some time taking care of yourself, because I didn't do that until I was 40 years old. So, and I went through periods in my life that I was at the verge of a nervous breakdown. I was not sleeping well, not eating well, traveling a lot, under a lot of stress. And now I think, now that I do all those things, and I look back and I think, wow, if I had taken 30 minutes out of a day, my life would not stop. But to either meditate or go for a run or something like that. So now, of course, now I have this portfolio life. So I can even tell you what my day was like today. I woke up at 6 a.m. My husband and I were with the dogs running on the beach at 6:30. Then I played an hour of tennis, worked for 4 hours, swam for 45 minutes, and now I've been in calls for the last 3 hours, and I'm here thinking, can I squeeze in a yoga practice tonight? But you,
Yeah.
of course, there are phases in life when that's not feasible, right? When I was working full time and my kids were growing up, or even next week, I had 3 full days of meetings. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to do that.
Right. So
But
pick
there are
your
always,
times, right?
but yeah, you kind of earn the right to do those
Right.
things. And what I try to do is to slot them
Mhm.
in short intervals. So I said I swam 40 minutes, which was
That's
I
great.
used the time that I could be having lunch or something like that, and I did that. But that's a message that I have for anybody who is watching this podcast is, if you want to increase your impact and be truly a transformational leader, create moments of pause, create moments to replenish your energy, to do something different and get your mind, because you're not going to be better by just obsessing over a problem without
Right.
stopping, which is what I did when I was young. So
Yeah. Excellent advice. Is there a passion project that you're currently working on you want to share with everybody?
I think that my passion projects are pretty consistent with what I said.
Yeah.
They are around mentoring and around empowering women. So it is. And then my mundane project is just finish my home in Florida and then just enjoy it. But
That's a great place.
and hopefully one of my children will give me grandchildren soon too. But that's
No
just
pressure.
you said passion projects, not wish list, right?
I know, right. Well, is there a mentor that you had that you feel like was the most influential for you growing up and kind of led you down this path?
I think there were several. There were mentors and there were role models, right?
Yeah.
And all those things that we don't even realize.
Right.
Now I look back and I realize how similar to my father I am, right? My father passed away 25 years ago. And of course, because we're so similar, we bumped heads a lot as I was growing up. But then I looked at him. He went from the interior of Brazil, a tiny city, to Rio, and was a self-made man and was so determined. And I left the country. I went somewhere else. And that's another thing. It's circumstances change.
Yeah.
And you self-define differently. I never defined myself as an immigrant until 2016. And then I started to say, I am an immigrant.
Yeah.
I was an educated and lucky immigrant, but I'm an immigrant like anybody else. So first and foremost, my father, and then I had those mentors throughout life. There was I had a particular professor who I then became. He was a mentor. Then I became his assistant professor. Then he left academia to be actually the president of the Federal Reserve in Chicago, and he hired me as a consultant. And I realized over the years, and now he's 80 something years old, and I still keep in touch with him, that I never took a job without going to him and saying, what do you think about this one?
Mm-hmm.
And so there are those people, and there are people who, I think there are two types of people, right? There are those ones that follow you through your entire life, essentially. And there are these people who you touch base with occasionally,
Yeah.
or it's a discrete opinion that you want on something that you reach out to this person. There's actually a friend who, as many others, kind of shaped the course of my life. I was probably about a year into my portfolio life, and I got a call and I started conversations. The job was CEO of a public company. And there was something in my stomach that was just, do I want this now? My husband could not believe you achieved this portfolio life that you wanted. Why would you go do that? And I called a friend of mine who had actually taken a job as a CEO of a public company, a woman. And she was in boards before. And I asked, what do you think? And she said, well, first of all, you will have to drop everything you're doing right now. Second, you will likely have to move to where the company's headquartered, because the first thing that goes wrong, the board's going to say it's because you're not there. And I remember, like, in a half hour of conversation, like, hell no, I don't want any of that. So sometimes you go to people who shed some light or give you some different perspective or ask you the right questions, and that's all you need at that point.
Yeah. Excellent advice, which goes to say that, building and keeping this network of people that you can go to for different things is really important. Are there any particular organizations or networks in your own experience you feel like are great for, women and minorities to be seeking out?
Absolutely. And to your first point, Teresa,
Yeah.
I call it building your own board of directors, your personal board of directors, your board of advisors, right? And there are people playing different roles, but you know that you have this plethora of people who are there for you. In regards to organizations, tons of them. So on the board side, women corporate directors, then there are all the segment-oriented organizations like the Latino Corporate Directors Association, ELC for African Americans, Ascend for Asian Americans. Then there are the more generic women organizations. So for P&L leaders, the Committee of 200 is a great organization. For women who have global careers, International Women's Forum, and I've been a member of all of them, and with different degrees of engagement at different points in time, right? Women Empowerment Network, which is a global Latinas organization for, So there are no lack of organizations out there. The only thing I'll say is it's not enough to register or be approved or be a member. The magic is in the engagement that you have. So I made it a rule for myself: if I belong to an organization that I have not participated in any event for 2 years, I dropped the membership. I dropped on a couple in the last couple of years, because either I was not interested or didn't have the time or didn't have the bandwidth or had other priorities. But for some reason, there was nothing happening that was compelling enough to make me drop other things and go to those events. And if you're not doing that, it's not worth it. It's like getting a gym membership and not showing up, not working out, right?
I think it's excellent advice. It's so many good points of discussion that bring optimism to the day. It's definitely been enjoyable for me to talk with you and learn more about you. Is there anything you want to share more that we haven't talked about that you feel like would help inspire?
Oh, I think we solved all the world problems.
I know. For today.
This has been great. As I said, the work that you're doing is so incredibly valuable, Teresa. I feel humbled and honored and privileged to spend this time with you.
The same here. And I think more women are starting to have these conversations, and the more we do that, I think the more our own networks grow and the more we can help each other. So it's important, I think, work for everybody. But I appreciate your work and appreciate your time here, and we'll have you back.
Thank you so much. I will come back.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.